Well, hello all. We are doing now chapter 21 of the Anarchist Handbook. I only have the few pages, and I know it's a little bit washed out in here, but these are always my less professional videos. We're just having a little chat, but rather than just recording it on my phone, which was having that kind of weird buzz, I figured I'd at least record it with my Zoom microphone, and let's see. And yes, this is my t-shirt from Anarchon, where I was a featured speaker. So we're on chapter 21, which is John Hasnas, The Myth of the Rule of Law. We're all the way up to 1995. The chapter after this is The Afterword by Michael Malice, and I'm not sure if I'm going to read that in full or excerpts, but in the next installment in this series, you'll find out, and then you'll also find out the next book we'll be going through. I've got so many that I really just don't know. Probably just going to pick one at random. So here we go. It is taken as a given that a society without an objective monopoly of law versus the state is the definition of chaos. Georgetown University law professor John Hasnas demonstrates that it is the precise opposite that is true, namely that objective law is both an incoherent concept and a utopian fantasy, impossible to put into practice. For those minarchists holding onto their ideal of the smallest state possible, here is the anarchist rebuttal. I am buying this book. I love this paragraph. It's the myth of the rule of law. This may be one that we do in a moment. Hold on, I'm looking over here at another screen where I'm trying to save something I'm going to chop up in the clips later. When I'm in my video mode, I'm in my video mode. Stop! What's that Dio song? Ride the Tiger. Okay, before reading, you see his stripes, but you know he's clean. Before reading this article, please take the following quiz. And then he goes on. That's not part I highlighted. I don't know why. I just got inspired at the moment. So here we go. Consider, for example, people's beliefs about the legal system. They are obviously aware that the law is inherently political. The common complaint that members of Congress are corrupt or are legislating for their own political benefit or for that of special interest groups demonstrates that citizens understand that the laws under which they live are a product of political forces rather than the rather than the embodiment of the ideal of justice. Further, as evidenced by the political battles fought over the recent nominations of Robert Bork and Clarence Thomas to the Supreme Court, the public obviously believes that the ideology of the people who serve as judges influences the way the law is interpreted. Derp. I would argue that this ability to maintain the belief that the law is a body of consistent, politically neutral rules that can be objectively applied by judges in the face of overwhelming evidence to the contrary goes a long way toward explaining citizens' acquiescence in the steady erosion of their fundamental freedoms. To show that this is the case, in fact, I would like to direct your attention to the fiction which resides at the heart of this incongruity and allows the public to engage in the requisite doublethink without cognitive discomfort, the myth of the rule of law. Its power derives from its great emotive appeal. The rule of law suggests an absence of arbitrariness, an absence of the worst abuses of tyranny. The image presented by the slogan, "America is a government of laws and not people," is one of fair and impartial rule rather than subjugation to human whim. After all, who wouldn't be in favor of the rule of law if the only alternative were arbitrary rule? But this image is also the source of the misdanger. For if citizens really believe that they are being governed by fair and impartial rules, and that the only alternative is subjection to personal rule, they will be much more likely to support the state as it progressively curtails their freedom. I need a mic to drop. I have one downstairs. I don't have one here, except for this one, which is my good one. I'm not mic dropping that one. Holy moly. So he goes on to talk about how laws develop and notices that this means a logically sound argument can be found for nearly any legal conclusion that you wish to come to. I have suggested that because the law consists of contradictory rules and principles, sound legal arguments will be available for all legal conclusions, and hence the normative predispositions of the decision makers, rather than the law itself, determine the outcome of cases. And I think we've seen this, like in the recent, I've done some analysis of some Supreme Court cases, and my best friend Mike Seebeck has disagreed with me on some of my analysis. We're both highly he's probably way smarter than I am, but we're both intelligent people. We're both thinkers. We have similar political views, yet we still came to logical, separate opinions. You know, neither of us is a barking moonbat. Well, I might be a little bit of one. The observation that the legal system is highly stable is, of course, correct. But it is a mistake to believe that this is because the law is determinate. The stability of the law derives not from any feature of the law itself, but from the overwhelming uniformity of ideological background amongst those empowered to make legal decisions. And maybe that's why there was such a disparity between Mike and I's opinion on some things, because we're libertarians, we're already free-range thinkers. There isn't, even though we have a uniform axiomatic view, we apply it in different ways. This raises an interesting question. If it has been known for 100 years that the law does not consist of a body of determinate rules, why is the belief that it does still so widespread? The answer is implicit in the question itself, for the question recognizes that the rule of law is a myth, and like all myths, it is designed to serve an emotive rather than a cognitive function. Now, I'm not so sure oh yes, we did here. Most people have been raised to identify law with the state. They cannot even conceive of the idea of legal services apart from the government. The very notion of a free market in legal services conjures up images of the anarchic gang warfare or rule by organized crime. In our system, an advocate of free market law is treated the same way Socrates was treated in Monocysia and is confronted with the same types of arguments. Amen. Preach it, brother. It is possible to describe what a free market in shoes would be like because we have one. But such a description is merely an observation of the current state of a functioning market, not a projection of how human beings would organize themselves to supply a currently non-marketed good. So sometimes that question, well, how would that work? I don't know. I can give you some ways it probably would work, but the free market is, you know, like in the original Jurassic Park, it's chaos. But it will come. Nature will find a way. I suspect in many ways a free market in law would resemble the situation in medieval Europe before the rise of strong central governments in which disputants could select amongst several fora. Our current system of adversarial presentation to a third-party decision maker is an outgrowth of these early public choice considerations, not its ability to successfully provide mutually satisfactory resolutions to interpersonal disputes. So it's arguing for a fundamentally different way to settle disputes. My personal belief is that under free market conditions, most people would adopt compositional rather than confrontational dispute settlement procedures, i.e., procedures designed to compose disputes and reconcile the parties, rather than render third-party judgments. This was, in fact, the essential character of the ancient legal system that was replaced by the extension of royal jurisdiction. Just want to make sure because all the pages are all messed up. The fact that there is no such thing as a government of law, fact is, there is no such thing as a government of law and not people. The law is an amalgam of contradictory rules and counter-rules, expressed in inherently vague language that can yield a legitimate legal argument for any desired conclusion. For this reason, as long as the law remains a state monopoly, it will always reflect the political ideology of those invested with decision-making power. Like it or not, we are faced with only two choices. We can continue the ideological power struggle for control of the law, in which the group that gains dominance is empowered to impose its will on the rest of society, or we can end the monopoly. We must recognize that our love for the rule of law is unrequited, and that so often happens in these cases, we have become enslaved to the object of our desire. No clearer example of this exists than the legal process by which our Constitution was transformed from a document creating a government of limited powers and guaranteed rights into one which provides the justification for the activities of the all-encompassing superstate of today. However heart-wrenching it may be, we must break off this one-sided affair. Constitution, it's you. It's not me. The time has come for those committed to individual liberty to realize that the establishment of a truly free society requires the abandonment of the myth of the rule of law. And that was a great ending, if I don't say so for myself, for that section. So the last part is the afterword by Michael Malice. So we'll see what we're going to do with that after I read it. It's been a well-loved book, as you can see how I tore it apart. So I hope you enjoyed this section.